My glasses are very broken. I didn't realize how poorly they sat on my face until I was actually looking at the camera here. Okay. Well, I might not need them that much. Anyway, when MaRo released his Ikoria teasers last time, I made a video with my predictions and stuff. I don't have a lot of people. Haven't been very consistent in posting to YouTube, which is a part of the reason why I don't have a lot of views in general, but that video had more views than a lot of my other ones, so I'm making another predictions video based on, I think it was today, Mark Rosewater, head of vision design for Magic the Gathering, posted on his Tumblr blog some teaser information for the new core set 2021 that'll be coming out in the first week of July, and the spoilers are starting actually really soon. They're starting like, I think Thursday, June 4th, which is also, I mean, at time of recording and at time of watching, everything, basically, in the grand scheme of things, Magic is pretty irrelevant, but it brought me some joy to read the teasers here and start thinking about it, so I wanted to share my thoughts with all of y'all. So I've copy and pasted his list here into a document, a spreadsheet more specifically, and I was going to walk piece by piece by the ones that I thought were worth talking about. So the system I was planning on using involves what I hope will happen versus what I think will happen. Sometimes they're like the same, or sometimes I don't have something for either of them. But let's start off with this spicy one. A brand new Planeswalker from a plane that we have visited. Hear me out. This is going to be coming out the first week of July 2020. In July 2018, 2 years prior to this, and keep in mind, the developmental delays of Magic the Gathering. So, like, this was probably in development. Now, MaRo doesn't work directly on these, but around that same time, or actually a little bit after that time, especially since core sets take less time. July 2018, Mark Rosewater was running a poll on his Twitter page that was talking about how about planes that people want to visit or revisit. And Lorwyn was surprised Mark Rosewater by being one of the top planes that people wanted to really return to. Lorwyn is also the only Magic the Gathering plane that we've been on for multiple premier expansions, or rather, any premier expansions that do not have a native Planeswalker to that plane. Therefore, I think that the new Planeswalker is going to be from Lorwyn. Now, exactly what, and if you don't know anything about Lorwyn, it was kind of a version of fairy tales before Eldraine was. It was less focused on traditional folklore and more about like Celtic mythology, like Celtic creatures, and also a little bit of Brothers Grimsby stuff when it flipped over to the Shadowmoor side. But the big thing is that there's no humans native to Lorwyn. So we would be getting another non-human Planeswalker. Looking at Core 2021, Teferi is the face of the set, and I presume that he will be mono blue and have a card, because they're going to do one Planeswalker for each color in the core set, which is their usual thing, I think. Although Teferi's mostly been showing up in blue-white recently, he is at his core a blue Planeswalker. The other colors I'm not entirely sure about. We just had Vivian as the face of Ikoria. Nissa is presumably the face of the Zendikar Rising set coming out after the core set, so I don't think either of them will be the green Planeswalker here. I think it'd be pretty likely that they use Garruk, because Garruk hasn't had a mono green incarnation in a while, and following the Eldraine story spotlight and part of the novel, Garruk has been cured of the Curse of the Chainveil. So I think it'd be cool to see him here. Red has kind of a few options. Red also just got a new character from the last set with Luca, the Planeswalker from Ikoria. Sorry, this screen's not very zoomed in. But the other one. Basically, Red is I don't think Red's going to get the new character just because they just got a new character introduced, but could still happen. So they'd be looking at black and white. Okay. Now, the tribes, Lorwyn was a tribal set with 8 major tribes that were each divided up into colors with their primary and secondary colors. I kind of like did some color coding and fading there. And in the Lorwyn is a world where it shifted between Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, which are like two. One was day and one was night, and creatures that were typically one thing became a different thing when the world transformed through the Great Aurora. Basically, there are two versions of Lorwyn. One of them had the different tribes in these colors, and the other one had them in these colors, which were sometimes similar, sometimes a bit different, and then this is meant to be the overlap mode. When you overlap the two night and day modes, these are the kind of central colors for each of the different 8 tribes. So Kithkin is the only tribe that's like always going to be primarily white, and black, the other color that we see of the remaining ones that are not blue, not blue, red, and green. And again, it could still be red or green, and it could be blue if Teferi's not mono blue. But I'm primarily looking at white and black here. White being a Kithkin, which are kind of Magic's take on halflings or hobbits, and black, which would be an element, so could be a cinder type of elemental. Elementals were in all 5 colors in Lorwyn, but there's the flamekin folk who are like the fire, like humanoid people made of fire in the Lorwyn half, and then they were more black than red, but they were in both as cinders in Shadowmoor. So we could have one of those or a fairy. Now, Oko is considered to be a fairy planeswalker. So because we just got Oko, I don't think we get a different fairy planeswalker, but I could be wrong. So based on process of elimination, unless they are not using Garruk or returning red planeswalker, we might be getting a Kithkin planeswalker, which is something I love. I've been kind of asking for that a while. Now, the issue with that would be, in War of the Spark, we just got Teo and the Wanderer introduced. I don't know if they'd introduced I don't think they'd put the Wanderer in the core set. But, can't say for sure. They could develop Teo more and put Teo in the core set. Ajani was in the last 2 core sets, so I don't think they'd go with Ajani. Elspeth just returned from the Theros Underworld, so they could print her again. Gideon's dead. But I think it'd be really cool. So Kithkin, like I said, are kind of Magic's take on halflings or hobbits, but something that makes them unique and gets into what it makes white a scary color at times is that Kithkin communicate through something called the Thought Weft. So they kind of have a a telepathic network where the Kithkins share emotions and some thoughts, and kind of, it's not, in the Shadowmoor version, it gets into the creepier, more hive mind portion versus the Lorwyn incarnation where it's like, oh yeah, we are, banding together, sharing our communal thoughts. But a Kithkin planeswalker removed from Lorwyn or Shadowmoor, removed from that Thought Weft, would have to deal with some very interesting story implications of like, what am I now that I'm stuck alone with my thoughts? So that's been something I've been hoping for a while. It's not, again, just because Lorwyn's the only world that hasn't had a new planeswalker of worlds we visited, because it's specifically from a plane we visited, of the premier set planes, Lorwyn is the only one without a native planeswalker. And again, I'm guessing that if they need that, one of the things holding them back from returning to Lorwyn is a lack of larger overall story reason to do so, because there aren't planeswalkers that have ties to Lorwyn. So if they wanted to test the waters and see if it's worth going back to Lorwyn and see if they had a reason to do so, it would make sense for them to introduce a character from Lorwyn, because that could give them a vehicle by which they could justify returning to Lorwyn. So that all is to say, my hope for this one, is Lorwyn Shadowmoor making it a non-human walker. Let me move Hushbringer down a little bit. She's just to prevent spoilers. Okay. The next card down here, the card that lets you draw half of your library, didn't actually interest me that much. It sounds kind of like that's just part of its effect, so I'm skipping that one. Now, a +1/+1, okay. A +1/+1 tribal lord for a creature type that's never had one, but is a creature type that has over 50 cards already in print. So that means it's a creature type that has been used in quite a few sets, kind of a prolific creature type, not one of the, go-tos like elves or goblins or something like that, but one that's not just hominids or octopus or brushwag, which I'm so happy we got that brushwag, y'all, but has missed the chance to get a creature that improves all other creatures of that type, their power and toughness by +1/+1. So I think that for me, there's one that's pretty outstanding that I'm predicting to be the choice here. And there are alternatives, but I think that the most likely one is actually probably Spider. Because the only thing similar to a Spider Lord we've received is Ishkana the Graph Widow, who rewards you for having multiple spiders, but she doesn't pump the power or toughness of spiders. And I think that spiders is a pretty resonant, cool type that we usually get at least one spider per core set, and they're kind of due for a lord. Some of the other types I was really thinking of didn't end up having over 50 cards. And of note, it is technically possible for dragons to receive this trial lord, because although there have been a lot of dragon payoffs and reasons to I want to play a bunch of dragons, there is not technically a dragon with a static ability that gives other dragons +1/+1, or even a creature that statically gives all dragons +1/+1. There's Crucible of Flame and effects that pump up your dragon, but by act through an activated ability. But there's actually no simple +1/+1 tribal lord for dragons. A creature with a Vanguard card and a legendary creature card that gets a second of the latter. So what this means is that it's a creature who's had a legendary creature before and is now getting their second legendary creature, but who also appeared on those old Vanguard cards, which were discontinued. Well, they stopped physically printing them before, around Y2K, and they stopped even doing avatars for them on MTGO. I think maybe with, probably around Innistrad-ish. I'm not actually 100% sure. I know Lorwyn had some, because I only care about Lorwyn, apparently. But there are two. So this is where I'm finally going to use my model of what I hope to see versus what I think we'll actually see. So I want to preface this talking about M19 and M20. In M19 and M20, each set had 10 multicolored cards. I'm sorry, that's a lie, 15 multicolored cards. Each set had a cycle of gold cards at uncommon, representing each colored pair and giving some guidelines for draft. That's something we see in a lot of sets nowadays, and it's been pretty standard for near 5 years. And I presume we'll still see that. The only other multicolored cards in the last 2 core sets were mythic tricolor cycles. So in M19, we got the Elder Dragons again, which were shard tricolor pairings. In M20, we had the wedge color pairings, finishing off those new mythic legendaries, although they weren't part of the Elder Dragons all had a specific story connection. These ones were more disparate. In this next set, it's possible that we'll get multicolored cards at rare or mythic that are not that are 2 colors and maybe in some sort of cycle, but I wouldn't expect a lot of them. And if so, we might get a cycle of legendary multicolored creatures that are 2 colors at mythic or something like that. I don't know. With that in mind, that affected multiple of my responses to this, by the way. I hope and really want the new legendary creature to be Momir Vig. Momir Vig has an iconic Vanguard card inspiring the whole Momir format, It has only received one legendary creature card. Realistically, I think that they're going to go with the character Baron, who was, again, Teferi is the face of the set. Baron is a character who is Teferi's teacher, and they've been redoing a lot of, or not necessarily redoing, but printing new versions of iconic legendary characters from way back in the day, back during, on Weatherlight Saga. Baron is relevant to Teferi. Now, with the Chandra facing set M20 last year, we didn't have that much stuff that's like, oh, this is the Chandra set. We had a few different Chandra Planeswalkers and a few different things, but like we didn't really explore her past like in an Origins style set. Now, it's possible we'll get double-faced Teferi. I don't know, probably not here, but so I don't think we're necessarily going to be delving into Teferi's past. However, I could see Baron being here. He would show up in mono blue probably, which means he's more likely to get a card as opposed to someone like Momer Vig, who is going to be blue-green, kind of just by expectation and definition. And so Momer Vig, I think, will be a new card at some point, something that plays into the aspect of the Momer format, I presume. But I don't know if it'll be here because depending on their restrictions on multicolor cards. Speaking of multicolor cards, a card with 31 different options. So if you're someone who spends a lot of time thinking about Magic cycles and permutations and stuff like that, you would know that in Magic there are 32 different possible combinations of colors or lack thereof. What I mean by that is if you exclude the idea of colorless, there are 31 different type or color combinations in Magic. Choose a color or any combination of colors leaves you with 31 options. Meaning that, okay, I can be blue, white, black, red, or green, or any of the 10 guilds, or any of the 10 3-color pairings, any of the 5 pairings of 4 colors, or all 5 colors. So this is going to just kind of definitively, like this one's not that interesting, but it's just the math of like, oh yeah, this is going to be something where you choose a color or any combination of colors of your choice and have some sort of effects. I don't know anything beyond that because there's just a lot of options with it. Okay, there we go. A card that gains all activated abilities of a certain subset of cards in a place that's never been done before. So it's probably more likely that it's a hand, but it's hard to reveal any number of cards from your hand. This creature gains all activated abilities of all creatures revealed this way, or something like that could be probably more realistic. But it'd be really cool if they did something with the stack. I don't know. So I was just talking about cycling. A card that uses a non-evergreen, that means one that doesn't show up or has the potential to show up in every set, named ability that's over 20 years old. Okay, so we have a few of these to look at. It says a card, so it's not necessarily multiple cards. It's not necessarily returning mechanic, which we used to have in the core sets, but it could be. We just had cycling, and I think if they bring cycling back again this set, it is becoming evergreen, which I think would kind of go in contradiction to the premise of a non-evergreen named ability, but I could be wrong. My hope is phasing, and the realistic one is just probably going to be Kicker. Kicker has been a very popular mechanic. It's one that's approachable for newer players. Kickers, again, when you are casting a spell, you can pay an additional cost to get an additional effect or bonus or something like that. Pretty simple. One of the biggest things holding Kicker back would be the lack of like fantasy resonant naming, but that's more of an issue for cycling than for Kicker. So it's probably Kicker. I say phasing solely because Teferi's protection could, like, basically Teferi, the face of the set, has historically been tied to phasing, but I think phasing is definitely too confusing for a core set, but it would just be cute. That's why I said this is in the dream category again. Okay. A card with the words, I really was like, that could be a few different, there's a few different ways you can do this. It'll probably be some sort of fun card, kind of like, something like, what's that red enchantment from Ixalan, the like Phoenix is on the art or whatever, like some kind of fun thing, get to cast things. I'm sure this card will be something I enjoy, but there's too many different permutations with this for me to put a reasonable guess together. An aura inspired from a cycle from Urza's Saga block. Okay. If you're thinking about cycles of auras from Urza's Saga block, the first thing that comes to mind, or rather the most prominent aura from Urza's Saga block that comes to mind for me is Rancor. Rancor was part of a cycle, so it could be an aura inspired from that same cycle of auras that return to your hand if the creature they're attached to leaves play. Could be. More likely, I think. So it could be a new card that uses that text. I think that based on this phrasing, it's more likely to be an embrace. Shiv's embrace, Zhalfir's embrace, Sarah's embrace. There's a few different Gaia's embrace. Auras that turned your creature into an iconic creature from Magic's past and refers to that. So like Shiv's embrace turns your creature into a Shivan dragon, more or less, or Sarah's embrace makes your creature into a Sarah angel, etc. I think that's more likely what we're going to see here. But if you're a fan of Rancor, stay tuned, because if you look down here, popular aura that started as part of a cycle, I'm actually guessing that one's Rancor. Because we had a Rancor in a core set previously. It'd be an interesting way to try to push a more aggressive decks. Not 100%, but could be. So a non-evergreen enchantment subtype returns. Okay, y'all. If you watched, actually, did I even post those videos? My videos talking about the historic anthologies. I don't understand how they're choosing those cards, because it seems like they're cards I would choose. When they put one of my all-time favorite cycles in Magic are the Handens, the shrines from Kamigawa block. They care about how many shrines you control, but the only shrines in all of Magic are the 5 in that cycle of legendary enchantment shrines. In Historic Anthology 3 for Magic the Gathering Arena, which sometimes has been used to support archetypes coming after it, they put the cycle of Handens there for a reason that's, they were trying to push enchantment archetypes, sure, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it's possible that it's basically, if it weren't for that, I would think it's impossible for shrines to return, ever. But it's possible that they will print a new shrine in this core set, which is an enchantment subtype. Sorry, I'm just drawing the screen. Wait, here we are. Here are the possible options. Aura, which is evergreen. Cartouche, specific to Amonkhet, and was specific to a single use on Amonkhet. I don't particularly see them printing a new Cartouche in a core set, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Curses, which are auras that you put onto opposing players primarily. And I say that's one I'm actually, that's the more realistic. If it weren't for the inexplicable inclusion of the Handens in Magic the Gathering Arena's Historic Anthology 3, I would have said it's a curse 100% signed, sealed, delivered. We just had sagas in Theros Beyond Death, and they are pretty resonant. It's possible that sagas return. But y'all, I really hope it's Shrine, because these are the only current options, and it's returning a non-evergreen subtype of enchantment. Yay! So here's hoping. Okay. So the next part is exclusively about reprints, and so this one is actually easier to, basically, it's a lot easier to be right or wrong, because it's is this card included or is this not out of an existing card pool? So, a popular character first introduced in flavor text. Okay, well, the first thing that popped to mind was Fibblethip, but they're not going to reprint the War of the Spark Fibblethip, most likely. It doesn't make a whole lot of, I don't think that there's a desire for that, unless they were going to give it new art, because the art for Fibblethip in War of the Spark does not look like Fibblethip that we know and love. It must be an imposter. But it doesn't say creature necessarily. It could be a planeswalker, reprinting a planeswalker that was first introduced in flavor text, of which there are a few options actually. Like Jaya, I think counts. Ugin would count. But again, Ugin's colorless, which is one of the biggest factors fighting against it. In addition to its the implications for standard, etc. But given that we're returning to Zendikar after this, it wouldn't be completely unreasonable for them to want to include the new Ugin, or not new Ugin, but the old Ugin rather. Or if they're doing a few flip planeswalkers, which is possible, given that Nicol Bolas received a flip planeswalker in M19, they could feel the need to give one to Ugin as well. But I don't think that is the most likely. I think it's possible, but it's not where I'm putting my money. Again, part of the restriction on characters are based on my premise about like multicolored creatures. So like if Momer Vig is the card that they're doing, and they're doing a cycle or a few like mythic or rare legendary creatures that are multicolored, then I could see it. Then I could see it being Safi Erikstadr, who is part of the struggle I had with this prompt was it has to be a popular character. Safi is best known from the flavor text of Lurgoyf. Hans run, it's the Lurgoyf. Safi is the person quoted on that text. Mons, what's the last name? It's the goblin. So this one, I'm unsure. This is the goblin that finally got a card in Modern Horizons. Was most famous from Mon's Goblin Raiders. So I guess they were kind of introduced through the name of the card, but Mon's whole name is written out in the flavored text of that card. Now, that is a card from Modern Horizons, meaning it is a kind of a pushed, powerful card. And I don't know if Modern Horizons was too, based on the timelines of when things were being worked on, I don't know if Modern Horizons would necessarily make it into, those cards would necessarily make it into this core set. It's possible, but that's also a possible restriction. I don't know if Ib Halfheart is popular enough, but that is another goblin originally from flavored text that finally got a card during Time Spiral block. I looked into a few different Time Spiral characters that could fit the bill here. I don't know Thrun the Last Troll from Mirrodin, or rather from Mirrodin Besieged, was first introduced in flavor text. I don't know how popular Thrun is. Maybe popular enough for a reprint. Who's to say? But also, any of the Phyrexian Praetors from New Phyrexia, those were all first introduced in flavor text in Scars of Mirrodin 2 sets before they got revealed. And those are all pretty popular, especially Elishnorn. So it's possible that we actually get a Praetor, but I don't know if they would print just one. They might. But in which case I'd maybe guess Elishnorn is probably the most popular, but I don't know if they'd put Elishnorn into this. Well, it depends on, I don't know what's in the pipeline. It's not necessarily a card that is broken in standard as a 7 mana creature that's about stats, but it does have an impact. And it's also kind of similar to one of the cards I'm predicting is already being reprinted, which kind of is a slight against her. But speaking of popular characters, the French Vanilla Mythic Rare. So for those of you unfamiliar with the terminology here, this means vanilla creature is one with no abilities. A French vanilla creature is one with only evergreen keyword abilities, such as Vampire Nighthawk, which has flying, death touch, and lifelink. It's got a lot of abilities, but it's a bunch of keyword abilities. The iconic French vanilla mythic rare is Baneslayer Angel, from originally introduced in the core set M10 and reprinted in M11. I actually have her down as my more realistic pick, and I think that's, when you see French vanilla mythic rare, to me, that's the first place my mind goes, because it's probably the most iconic for being of that status. But original Akroma also fits that bill, Akroma Angel of Wrath. She's got more abilities than Baneslayer Angel, and she actually ticks a few other boxes. Now, I don't know how deep they're going to be going with playing up Dominarian nostalgia stuff with Teferi's the phase of the set, probably doesn't play a factor. But this card is really cool and would be an interesting card to reprint. Now, I already revealed the ranker for the next one, but y'all know that. But there is a card later on. A card from the Time Spiral Time Shifted sheet. A chroma also could work as a double dipper in both of those categories. Disenchant. Oh, you can see part of what I'm getting at here. Let me just do this final one while I'm showing it. Coalition Victory is also possible. I was looking at ones that have mechanics that they could put into a core set and ones that people would want, etc. There's a Disenchant double dips in a different category. Browbeat I could see. I would love Tribal Flames. Tribal Flames deals damage based on the number of basic land types you control. And given that the Triomes from Ikoria have 3 different basic land types, this card would be really, really, really good. Maybe too good. I don't know. I don't know what else is in the pipeline, etc. But it'd be kind of cute, and would be a card that would be interesting to see if they reprinted it. I'm presuming that this is going to be a chroma as well, if not Disenchant or one of the other options. So let me fully block this off for a second. Okay, so French Vanilla Mythic Rare. Okay. We talked about Rancor. A card with unique protection. There's kind of just too many options to know for sure. Yeah. But my guess would be like protection from Planeswalkers or something. It could be legitimately anything. It's just something that doesn't have protection already. So not one of the colors. It could be a specific creature type if they wanted. It could be a card type if they wanted. We already have protection from instants, but we don't have other things like that. Depends on how deep they want to go down this rabbit hole. This question scares me. 2 cards played in tournaments that have been reprinted over 20 times with at least 5 different pieces of art. So you could look at a list of the card, not based on tournament playability, but based on the number of times reprinted. Like, I've been doing a lot of Scryfall queries. And let me start by saying I really, really hope it's not one of the multiple ramp spell options for this slot. And based on there being 2 cards here, Rampant Growth, Birds of Paradise, and Llanowar Elves all fit the bill for the criteria here. They said they learned the lessons with 1 mana dorks and accelerants. Bringing Llanowar Elves back was a special case. We've had the Goose, who is not the same, but is also good. I think they know better. I hope they know better, given that there's still really good ramp cards in Standard. Some of them will be rotating, but I don't think it's safe to put any of these. The other one I really hope they don't do is Lightning Bolt. Like, it might be fine for Standard. It might be. But it is iconic. It would also warp Pioneer, which I know is their new baby, but I don't know. So the main options I'm thinking are Disenchant, which again double dips with, it was technically on the Time Spiral Time Shifted sheet, or Duress and Fireball. Now, played in tournaments past tense applies to Fireball, even though wouldn't currently see played in tournaments when reprinted in the core set necessarily, unless we really needed an X damage spell, but I don't think that would be the case. Duress, on the other hand, we've seen in core sets before. It's very popular. It's very useful. I bet we're getting Duress again. We haven't seen it in like a year or 2. Basically, once Ixalan rotated. Oh, I guess that's not even that long. Yeah, so probably Duress and either Fireball or Disenchant. A card that's never previously appeared in a Premier set. So what this means, Premier sets are their new verbiage for a standard legal expansion. Meaning this card may have appeared in just pre-made deck options before, like a commander set or like Portal, or Portal I think counts here because it was not a Premier expansion. Don't know about things like Starter 2000 and stuff like that, but one of the ones that you could use like Conspiracy or Battle Bond also. There's some really cool options. Like, there's a lot of cool options from this one. My joking / hopeful one is Teferi's Protection, which I mentioned is like the one that uses phasing. So if this is like the one card just because it's got Teferi on the name and they want to reprint it, that'd be hilarious. Probably not a good idea, but hilarious. It could be any number of curses that were exclusive to non-premier sets. Kindred Discovery is a commander card that I could see them putting into a core set. It's when you basically play it, you choose a creature type. Whenever a creature of the type of your choice enters, you draw a card. Like, it's a card that'd be exciting to new players that wouldn't break standard and has some desirability to it. One thing I could see would be like Ancient Stone Idol, which is a commander card that also is kind of it was a reference to a specific card from Zendikar block, and since we're going back to Zendikar block, it could be something that, like peppering that stuff in, giving you the token, I don't know. There's a bunch of different like specific hate cards or stuff like Angel Finality, which is an angel that enters and exiles an opponent's graveyard, which could be good. It would fill the role of like white hate creature that also is decently bodied, etc. One of the cool ones, I think, would be Thief of Blood. So if you don't know Thief of Blood, I don't blame you. If you're not a commander player, whatever. Let's see, is this? No, that's the wrong one. Nope. Okay. Thief of Blood. So when this enters the battlefield, remove all counters from all permanents, and Thief of Blood enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter for each counter removed this way. Now, this card wouldn't actually be good, but given the number of types of counters running around in Standard right now, I think it'd be a cute one for them to put in the core set. This counts removing loyalty counters from Planeswalkers. So this enters and kills all Planeswalkers, removes all +1/+1 counters, all ability counters, all what kind of counters do sagas use? Like chapter counters or lore counters or whatever. Any other kind of counters, it just sucks them up and then you get a big flying creature. So it's mostly as a Planeswalker Necrotal that puts an evasive threat on the board. 6 mana is super expensive, but I think it'd be kind of a cute one. I think it's possible that this would see play out of like, it's hard to say. Basically, I was thinking like in the sideboard and control mirrors if you're behind a board. Even that, I don't know. But it's kind of cool. It would exist in Standard with the 3 mana Sorin until Zendikar hit, because there's the 3 mana Sorin Planeswalker from last core set who he can minus and put a vampire from your hand into play. So you could play Sorin, play this. She kills the Sorin, gets some counters, and also wipes any counters from anything else. Kind of cute. But I think that's like kind of what I'm hoping for more than actually Teferi's Protection. But there's a lot of options. There's also like a bunch of like large creatures, Timmy-sized creatures, big green creatures that they could put in here that would excite some people. It's kind of hard to say. There's a lot of options. There's so many options for this one. But I think the cutest one to me is Thief of Blood. Okay. Ready for this? A card that's never been... Oh, actually, wait, hold up. Does my link work? Oh, shit. Did I forget a part of this? Oh, no. This works. Did I include the no reprint thing? Oh, no, I didn't include the no reprint thing, did I? I just realized that the query I put into here is not correct. Because I think I coded most of the query for this correct. I just forgot about the not reprinted part. It did say card that's never been reprinted. Oh, yeah. Paper sets equals 1. Oh, wow. Okay, I know what card it is. It's Massacre Worm, which was also the main prediction I had for this anyway. I forgot that I didn't see the not reprinted part before. So Obelisk of Alara and Zathrid Gorgon. Well, Zathrid Gorgon doesn't have a reprint per se. She has a promo version, which for M13. So I don't know if they would count that. It does have more than one paper set technically. But like, if I coded this all correctly, these are the following options. Oops. Let me hide Hushbringer. Where's Hushbringer 2? Massacre Worm, Sazan Pervert of Truth, who's the next most likely option. Serendib Jin, who requires you to sacrifice islands. Resounding Thunder, which is a 3-colored cycling cost, and a Rebels relevant card. So unless they're bringing back Rebels, which they could, maybe that's what's happening, Remosian Revivalist would be the pick there, but I think it's Massacre Worm. We just haven't seen a reprint of Massacre Worm, and it's a desirable card and a cool mythic card that would be cool in a core. It's like core set friendly. I'll include my updated Scryfall query in the video description, by the way, because I got to wrap this video up. Oh gosh, it's 45 minutes already. Okay. Well, luckily there's only 2 things left. One of which we already talked. Oh, so there's only 1 left. Okay. Human Monk. So, the most desirable human monks would, like, there's a few different desirable human monks, rather. They have not been using prowess. Ah, fuck. Prowess has been phased out as an evergreen mechanic. So, of the monks that don't have prowess, your options are actually quite a bit more limited. If they include prowess, that might include Swift. What's the, not Taylor Swift, the one that sees play in Modern and Historic, the burn creature, 1 mana for 1/2 haste prowess. Swift, not Swiftblade Vindicator. That's the RTR card. Okay, doesn't matter. There's a lot of different prowess monks, but Sarah Ascendant, they might include. It was reprinted in, was it Ultimate Masters, something like that. It could be, it was originally printed in a core set in M11. I think that my sleeper pick is Graceblade Artisan, who, if you're like me, you wouldn't have known this card by name. But it's kind of an archetype limited uncommon. Graceblade Artisan is a wombat. It just gets bigger for the number of auras on it. Gets +2/+2 for each aura attached to it. We already know there will be a few different auras in this set between, and these might overlap, but like Rancor and the aura from a cycle and the aura inspired by an Urza Saga cycle. Auras will be a limited archetype. And Graceblade Artisan is a human monk that it's not all that exciting, but also hasn't been reprinted. Could be used there. I don't know if that's one worth teasing, but maybe. I just really hope it's not Azusa, Lost but Seeking. Again, ramp is already too good in standard. I'm scared. Okay, so those are my lists. That's my list. Hopefully I can cut down this video a bit so it's not as long as it currently says. But let me know what your predictions are, where you disagree or agree, and what you're excited for. Let me know. All right, y'all. Have a good one.